Okay, so have you ever thought about how, how our surroundings, they kind of reflect what's going on inside? You know what they say, right? A messy room equals a messy mind.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what we're going to be diving into today, but way more intense with You Are Here.
Mm-hmm.
Think Dante's Inferno,
Okay.
but instead of, fire and brimstone, we're talking algorithms and augmented reality.
It's really fascinating how this artist, David Corona, is taking this really old idea of landscapes mirroring morality
Yeah.
and launching it into the digital age.
It's true. And he's not just using any landscape. He's fixated on the human eye.
Right.
The iris, calling it the iriscape. He thinks that he can map our values and choices onto this super unique and personal terrain.
What I think is so interesting about this is that he isn't just trying to visualize these landscapes. He wants to make them into a tangible experience.
Whoa.
Something you can actually feel and touch. Think interactive installations, augmented reality, filters, even virtual reality, where you could walk through the landscape of your own eye.
Hold on, back up a second. How does he even go from something as abstract as values to a physical landscape? What is he hiding a supercomputer in an art gallery somewhere?
That's where it gets really interesting and kind of complicated. Corona uses a binary system, just ones and zeros,
Okay.
to give different values to different landscape features. Mountains, oceans, deserts, all of these correspond to three big ideas that he keeps mentioning: existence, order, and humanity.
So if I'm someone who's super into order, would my iriscape look like rows of perfectly aligned digital trees?
Well, maybe, but think bigger.
Okay.
It's less about these literal interpretations and more about the overall feeling you get when you look at it. Dante's Inferno used really vivid imagery to convey moral ideas. Corona's doing the same, but with pixels instead of poetry.
Okay, I'm starting to get the visual, but this Dante connection, I get that he was really into hell.
Right.
But what does that have to do with our eyes?
At its core, Dante's Inferno is about the journey of the soul.
Okay.
And that's what Corona's tapping into. But he's also drawing inspiration from this other really different source, Juan Rulfo's novel, Pedro Páramo.
Now that's a curveball. What does a 20th century Mexican novel have to do with all of this?
It all comes back to this feeling of being caught in between a kind of terrestrial limbo. In Pedro Páramo, the whole town is haunted by the regrets of the dead. Corona is using technology to create that same haunting feeling.
Wow.
But it's our own values that are doing the haunting.
Okay, now that is super interesting. So we're not just talking about, pretty landscapes here, right? We're talking about landscapes that hold up a mirror to our deepest selves. So it's less about what does this look like and more about what does this make me feel.
Yeah.
That's kind of brilliant, but also kind of creepy when you think about it.
Exactly. Corona wants to get a reaction out of you.
Yeah.
He wants to make you face those uncomfortable truths about yourself.
Right.
He's playing with this idea that our internal landscape, the one that's shaped by our values and beliefs,
Yeah.
that can actually be more haunting than any physical place.
Okay, before we go too far down that road and have a full-blown existential crisis, let's go back to the how for a second. How does he actually create these personalized landscapes? Does he literally scan your eye or something?
Well, he's looking into using 3D scanning as part of the process.
Okay.
But he's really interested in the potential of algorithms and data.
Right.
Remember how we were talking about that binary system earlier?
Yeah.
Well, he imagines an app that could collect information about you, maybe by asking you questions, or even just by looking at what you do online.
Wow.
And then using all that data to generate your own personal iriscape.
Hold on. Is he suggesting that our digital footprint could be used to visually diagnose our souls?
Maybe?
That's incredibly cool, but also kind of scary, don't you think?
It's like taking one of those personality quizzes, but instead of being sorted into a Hogwarts house,
Right.
you get this whole personalized landscape that reflects your deepest self. Are you mountains of ambition or a vast empty desert of apathy?
Okay, now I really need to see this app.
Right.
But all jokes aside, isn't there a huge ethical issue here with data privacy?
Absolutely. And Corona even acknowledges that in his notes.
Okay, good.
He's raising all these questions about who gets to see this data, how they're allowed to use it, and the potential for misuse.
Right, what could this data be used for?
Exactly. Who gets to see these landscapes, and could this technology be used to manipulate people? Could it be used to exploit people? These are all questions we should be asking as technology keeps advancing.
Yeah, it's we have this amazing tool for self-reflection.
Right.
But it could also be misused really easily. It's a real double-edged sword.
It is, and Corona doesn't shy away from that tension. He talks about incorporating both the beautiful and the grotesque. the
Interesting.
familiar and the strange into his landscapes. He wants to create a visceral reaction. He wants to make you feel something, even if it's uncomfortable.
So it's like he's saying, this is you raw and unfiltered, now deal with it.
Yeah,
I can see how that would be captivating, but also really unsettling for people.
for sure.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to create art that you just observe from a distance.
Okay.
He wants you to experience it, to question it, and to face these truths about yourself and the world around you that maybe you'd rather avoid.
So it becomes a dialogue then. It's like a collaboration between the artist and the viewer.
That's exactly right.
Mm.
He even mentions incorporating interactive elements into his installations so people can actually manipulate the landscapes and see how their choices change the environment.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
You know, this whole idea of a terrestrial limbo keeps coming up.
Right.
And I'm realizing he's not just talking about a physical space, is he? It's more like we're already living in a type of limbo stuck between the physical world and the digital world.
You got it. Just think about how much of our lives happen through screens now, social media work, even our relationships.
That's true.
In a way, we're already moving through these virtual landscapes every single day,
Right.
whether we realize it or not.
It's like he's holding up a mirror not just to us as individuals, but to our entire society and reflecting our anxieties, our obsessions, and our evolving relationship with technology right back at us. It's like he's saying, wake up, right? This digital world, it's shaping you whether you realize it or not. And I'll admit, I get it, you know? Like I get sucked into how convenient it all is, you know, that constant connection. It's easy to forget that there's maybe like a price we pay for that.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's not about saying all technology is bad, but it is about being aware of how it affects us.
Yeah.
Remember those three big ideas: existence, order, humanity.
Yeah.
It's almost like those are levels in a video game.
Yeah.
You know? And Corona's saying that like the way we navigate those levels in our digital lives, well, that's shaping who we become in the real world.
So it's not just about, you know, scrolling through social media. It's about understanding that all those scrolls, those likes, those shares, they're all like building something inside me,
Yeah.
shaping my values, how I see the world, my internal landscape. That's a lot.
It is. And it all comes back to that idea of the ninth heaven that he keeps talking about.
Right.
And it's not about like reaching some perfect digital utopia. It's about self-discovery,
Mm-hmm.
you know, facing our own complexity, but through this digital lens.
So it's less about achieving digital enlightenment or something and more about like taking a long, hard look in the digital mirror.
Exactly. And that's where the iriscape comes in.
Right.
It's like the end result of that whole journey. A visual representation of every choice, every experience that's made us who we are, both online and offline.
This has been mind-blowing, honestly. I need to like go stare at some trees, touch some grass, you know?
Get back in touch with the real world.
Exactly. After I check my phone one more time. But before we wrap up, does Corona give us any hints about where he sees this project going in the future?
He's definitely leaving us with more questions than answers, which I think is kind of his thing.
I can see that.
He talks about you are here as an evolving project. He wants to bring in new technology, new ways of experiencing it, you know, different voices.
So it's not a finished product then. It's more like a starting point.
Right, an invitation to keep exploring these ideas in new ways.
I like that.
It really is a project that feels both really relevant to right now, but also timeless.
Right?
It's dealing with these huge questions about morality and what it means to be human, but through this very modern lens of technology.
I feel like I need to go back and look at everything differently now. My phone, my computer, even just my reflection in the mirror. Who knows, maybe some of our listeners will be inspired to create their own iriscapes.
That would be amazing.
Oh,
I love that idea. This conversation is really just getting started.
It really is. This deep dive has given us a lot to think about. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Until next time, everyone keep exploring those internal landscapes. But hey, maybe log off every now and then and appreciate those real-world landscapes too.